Hello and welcome to the On Par podcast with me, which is Greg Sharp, your CEO and founder of Zen Contract. And today I'm really lucky to be joined by one of my favorite MSPs out of New York City, which is Mr. Georg Dauterman, who's the CEO and founder of Valiant Technologies. So welcome along, George.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you having me here today. I'm really excited to talk to
Yeah, I mean, we just had a little funny moment there with the fact that we tried another tool and got a little bit of success that can run this morning. So it'll be nice and casual, all warmed up.
you.
But yes, give us a little bit of background about Valiant, and I know you guys are cool and hip and in the whole creative scene in NYC. You could give us a bit
Yeah.
of background to that.
Yeah, great. Trying to our sort of unique niche or who we are as a company is working with creative folks who generally don't or are not the main focus of many MSPs. Folks that are just being creative, building or creating art, advertising, marketing, any of the sort of a little bit left to the side, a little odd, who need that support and help and need that enterprise or high level security and IT infrastructure, and they don't get it. So we're trying to fill that need, and we love working with those people and do some of the unique things, unique challenges that they face day in day out.
Okay, and you've been going near on 21 years now with this business, right?
That's correct. We started out as the typical MSP as a little knuckleheads in a room who had a specialty with Macs. My background was I was working for a large a holding company, advertising holding company, so I knew those people in that space really well, but kind of branched out into the other parts of that creative fields, cultural nonprofits, art galleries, design shops, apparel, architecture at times. So a lot of folks who create things who have that sort of I would say they're not risk management mindsets. They look at problems very differently. So our challenge is always how do we serve them and protect them and keep them functioning while at the same time honoring and supporting their way of looking at the world. So it's sort of I think that's unique who we are as a company.
So some of the nuances of that particular portion of the market would be obviously quite Mac-based. Large files need to be on site, but want to be cloud. And for a lot of the time where Mac computers, the Linux-based, they're quite sort of nailed down. How do you go about conveying the value of a managed service for computers that sometimes just, they just work, or they always, all the time? I'm sure that's part of the mindset of
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Macs are the best. It just works until it doesn't, and then when it doesn't, it breaks spectacularly. And really, what it really comes down to is, especially we tend to find that most companies go into like a sort of life cycle where it starts out a couple of folks starting out, everyone has their own Macs and they're using Google and they're working and they're doing their thing, but then they hit a certain inflection point where it gets too complicated. We're working with a company now. It was literally that. It was like two dudes in a room creating unbelievable, punching way above their weight, winning multiple Cannes Lions, really high heavy hitters. But then they win a really large account with a really large FANG company. And all of a sudden, they need to have a cybersecurity program. They need to have processes. They need to have methodology for managing all that data they're creating, and a life cycle for it. So luckily, we knew them from a previous life. Just kind of remembered us, and we're working with them to put together a full solution for them, so that they can both keep their creative mindsets and the way they like to work, while at the same time not letting them violate contracts they signed. It's a really important part.
You're enabling them to break through that glass ceiling so they can actually scale out to bigger and bigger, better clients, in a certain inflection point. And I'm sure you have an entry level to help out the sort of small guys, because you know that they're going to grow over time.
Exactly. We actually have a special product we do for that called our Valiant Launchpad, where it's a really basic setup for setting up the cloud environment, which we found to be at this point to be the core of most small businesses. Those are our clients. They're not coming with legacy servers or networks or firewalls. They are literally a bunch of folks with laptops creating unbelievable stuff. And I think it's going to get even more accelerated with the AI language model products out there, the Gen AI stuff. So So our idea was to put together a entry level product that allowed them to set up the environment correctly. And as they scale to a certain point, we're able to bring them onto as a full MSP customer, and kind of they know how to work with us. They know and we know that their environment is set up correctly to a very high standard. Kind of gives them that comfort. Not everyone graduates, right? Honestly.
That's a really good way to think about it, because I mean, to put it in American terms, it's, allowing them to get into elementary school and then guiding them through to middle school and junior high and then high school, but doing it in a way where you're not preventing them from joining the program because of the overbearing cost and the high level of, but allowing them to join the program in a way that is commensurate with where they are on their business journey, but
Correct.
still gives you the ability to be able to, make the same level of profit on that smaller amount of money, but just not forcing them to have all of the products, but mitigating the risk. So I think that's where a lot of us MSPs, if I can just dive in on this for a minute,
Yeah, for sure.
say, hey, you have to do it our way or the highway.
100%.
And potentially what they're doing is ignoring future perfect clients by doing that. And I think having a launch pad or a launch program or some sort of starter kit, I think, is a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, and especially with this sort of, for the marketplace we're serving, it's a continuous birth death cycle for these small agencies, or when I worked in agencies, it's interesting. Like most people's resumes, if you had 10 jobs on your resume, you would be like, "What's wrong with this person? Why do they keep switching jobs?" But if you work with someone who knows who's in a creative field, that's completely normal to have 10 jobs on their resume. Actually, it's desirable because it means they have breadth of experience. They worked on different accounts. They might only stay at a certain point. So what we found was that as markets shift and companies, there's more and more companies being born every day. And we want to serve those companies because a lot of them, they can really use that. They can really use the setup. Getting it done right the first time is actually very powerful for them because it's done correctly. And then beyond that, they do grow into great customers, and they know how to work with us. It's sort of like it's a win-win, we think, for everyone.
Ironically, George, that was the tagline for the last IT company that I had. Get it done right the first time was our tagline, with IT obviously being big. So there you go.
Right.
Yeah. And so how have you found then the best way? So you've obviously gone down a niche. You've got great experience, relevant experience. You've got a starter kit for that particular niche. And I'm guessing word of mouth works well in your favor. But, New York City's a big place. Not everyone can talk to everyone. How have you gone about spreading the word of Valiant to beyond your immediate circle of influence?
That's a great question. It's something we're always refining and reviewing. So, part of it is a very pointed outreach to specific account-based marketing, where we know sort of who's out there, who we want to talk to, sponsoring different either nonprofits or industry groups or events, just some like legitimate thought leadership around very specific topics that these folks may deal with. Great example would be like one of the things that we find as I think that most MSPs and even ourselves at times struggle with is most of these firms will have a lot of contract or freelance employees. So you have to really be mindful of those people and how you're going to, A, onboard or offboard them, B, bill for them. There has to be some kind of billing back and forth for them. How are we going to make sure that they're done in a timely fashion? Nothing's more expensive than hiring a hired gun to come in there for the pitch, and they're not working. So I think there's so much to do around that. And even ourselves, we're always refining that process. A lot of it is us looking at a lot of robotic process, RPA automation, leveraging tools in our RMM, but also really identifying that this is a challenge for them and speaking to them in a way that they can understand, because it's a huge problem.
Yeah, you've really investigated your ICP or whatever, your perfect customer, and then identify their top 10 pain points and put solutions around those 10 pain points, right? I mean, it's not, might not be 10, might be 9, whatever it is. Yeah, that's a really smart, unique way about going and taking that to market, right? Because you're in a unique, well, not unique, but a very fortunate. There's no end of customers you can get to. America's
Correct.
big place, really, really big place. And I'm
And
guessing not you, albeit that there's a huge amount of populace. I'm guessing you've got agencies that are outside New York.
we do. We work with folks right now. We're working with folks in Chicago, LA, down in Texas. So we're working all over the country, and really, I mean, like if I could be like that, like the big goal is really be a go-to MSP for these folks, and like the classic like, hey, I'm starting an agency. Who should I call? Oh, I know this is these folks in New York that really specialize in what we do. Much like I find some of the in New York here or in LA, in different parts of the country or in the UK as well, this specialty financial services MSPs. And people go, oh, we don't name other names here, but we know who they are. People say, oh yeah, if you're gonna hire, if you're at this point, this is who I'm gonna hire. So, but I don't think that our niche has anyone like that. There's a couple of players that are quite good, highly respectable, but no one's really become like a name. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us, and also really help the customer be in a much better spot because they have someone who knows their business and can work with them for all the different parts of it, and also the fluctuations in their business. That business can be very, very volatile based on so many outside components. So we want to be mindful of that.
How do you then, I mean, I've got two things to say. So one, I really resonate with that because, obviously we are in contract management for MSPs, and we really want to become the default go-to people for managing of contracts and contract automation, that type of thing for MSPs, right? So
Right.
like we're doing that all day, every day, we should be starting to get pretty good at it and become known as the go-to.
Right.
And so that's where you're at too with this particular industry. And creative is not just advertising.
Right.
It's obviously marketing, PR, but creative. And
It's a broad subject.
Yeah, that is quite broad. And then you put across a very broad populace. There's no shortage of customers for you to go and talk to.
I
But
mean,
secondarily, how do you manage client concentration risk then? And I'm not sure if this is something that's a bit off topic for us, but we can
no, it's a
go
great.
down this road. If advertising, creative, PR is, it can get hit kind of hard in a recession.
It does. We do.
Manufacturing will carry on, or financial services will carry on. So I'm curious to get your thought around that. I'm sure it's come across your brain.
Yep, 100%. And so what we've done is we did some diversification in that space. Adding in a good specialization around some nonprofit service support. Folks who just because we found that here in New York there's a massive U.S. as well, but New York particularly massive nonprofit community. And we did really well there, and depending on where they're what nonprofit type they are, there's a cultural nonprofit. They definitely have a very similar tech stack as what our advertising marketing companies have. So it was a very easy transition. A and B. The other place we found that was interesting was that we found that a lot of MSPs ignore or don't want to support professional services or financial service companies that have a Mac and Google backend. So we're very comfortable working in those spaces. We found that we were able to work with those folks and just deliver a high level of support and service for them, because once again, we always kind of joke, the people that are the professional services companies are very demanding in terms of the way they want response, but the actual tech part of it's not that hard compared to like when you're comparing someone generating like terabytes of video a day or on this kind of unbelievably tight pitch deadline. It's kind of like the blocking and tackling of day-to-day legal services. It's hard, but it's not as it doesn't require as much specialization, and not to diminish it in any way. It's just that we can very easily do that support. So we found this sort of like niche in that sort of slightly alternative tech stacks where folks that say, I'm a big Google, Mac, I think they're great products. And I think that we can support that really well for them. So that gives a little bit of hedge against that, one industry downturn. We kind of learned that a couple of times. I've been through a couple of economic downturns over the years, and you don't want to be any one single place. So that's a really bad place to be. So we always look at that. Another thing is, you said something really interesting about client concentration. We're really mindful of not having any customer have too high a percentage of our overall revenue. Having been in that spot,
we definitely ran a spreadsheet and managed the percentage. We tried to make it so that no one was more than a single 10%, and no one industry was more than a quarter. But you might go and get a decent client and they currently sit at 12%, then you just don't go after that industry. You just sort of fill it out with some others. But right. I want to stress like that's not any any type of criticism of your niche, because it's so wide, advertising. Yeah. And then what I would be curious when I'm taking on a new client, if they were a decent size, say they were over 10%, I would probably be asking questions like, what industries do they serve? Because that's going to be more poignant about whether they are going to experience the times. They might be mainly in PR for mattress manufacturer. Okay, well, those guys don't, everyone needs to sleep, so there's no problem there, right? So then you can.
It's funny you say that. We were very fortunate. Two of our customers are PR firms. One does alternative investments. The other one's for mainstream financial services firms. And those guys are growing. They're great. Like, they're in really good shape. Now we have other folks that are, doing advertising for toys. That they're definitely suffering a bit more right now because of the tariff and all that sort of like political uncertainty, and kids don't play with toys as much. So they're pivoting. So we're always very mindful of that. And one of the things I always try to teach my team or work with the team on is like, we should really know how our customers make money, because our job is to really help them do that better. At the end of the day, as much as infrastructure and security are in and of themselves important, our main goal is to help them be more successful by either having it working all the time or by giving them new opportunities. I always ask, like, how do you guys make money? It's really important.
I think it's incredibly important for the people that are maintaining the relationships, right? So obviously our service teams underpin them. They're foundational. They have to do their job well all the time. But that's very noticeable if they're not. It's very hard to grow the relationships if that's not there. And I always think that's very apparent. Yeah, foundational needs to be super good. But then the asking business questions from the account management team, or whatever you call them, technical account managers that are in speaking to the clients all the time, they need to be really understanding of that industry, what drives that industry, what, if they're in energy or land, what are the drivers for that industry, and, what's the oil barrel price? That's going to be interesting. If you're in dairy, what's the global dairy price for milk powder? That's big down our way.
Together.
So those are the drivers, because then those become the drivers as to whether that business is trying to maximize efficiency, which means technology can help with that. It might be less people, but more AI workloads in the future, and or they're looking at growing their team because they want to get more. Then we need to have more infrastructure and more gateways and BYOD. Those are two different business decisions, aren't they?
We've become very disciplined in our quarterly business review process as a company. And one of the things, and that's probably the most important part of the QBR process. And we actually internally work on building the best question set we can to work to like kind of almost role play internally. How do you ask the right questions? Because most people, if you ask, say, how's business? They say, great.
It's great.
It's great. Yeah. Everything's great. But if you ask questions like, did you experience the growth you expected this quarter, or was it harder than you expected? I really don't care about the numbers. That's your business, but more, is this what you had anticipated, and did the technology support that, or didn't? Did you find something was lacking? And was the Valiant team there for you when you needed it in the pinch, or were things set up correctly in a way that you were able to work without thinking about it, which is our ultimate, and at the end of the day, it's our ultimate goal, is where things just work somewhat flawlessly, and we're just there to kind of orchestrate it and get it off the ground for them. So I think that it's really crucial, and one that we've been doing it for a long time, and we're still always refining it. It's a never-ending process, and the more you can learn about it, the better, I think.
Yeah, I think the drivers of whether you're in a bear market or bull is interesting. And obviously that's not financial. It could be whether you're, like I say, mattress manufacturing or whatever, is that there's the good times or bad, and where interest rates are. You don't need to turn yourself into an economics professor, but you do need to ask good leading questions, right? So are you looking to grow in the next 12 months? Are you looking to become efficient? Are people going to lose their jobs? Is it a tightening market? Is it an expanding market? Some of that stuff you can do beforehand, and God knows ChatGPT's your friend. If this is a mattress manufacturer in Ohio, you can go and ask ChatGPT about what are their biggest threats and opportunities in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then be a little bit informed when you go in there, just to have some starters for 10. And same with advertising and PR and things that would stop you doing that.
100%. I think the more you I mean, listen, our best partners are people that know our business really well and are genuinely curious about it. And genuine curiosity comes across. It's a legitimate thing. And when someone's reading the script versus tell me what's really going on here and how can we be part of helping you. And I think if you institute that as part of your company's culture, that's a really powerful differentiator because now you're just not just pushing patches, which is you said it earlier. That's table stakes. That's like everyone does that. Why work with anyone else besides the lowest price? It has to have a higher value, and that's really understanding how you can help them achieve their goals. You do, as I said, efficiency, growth, opportunities. So there's so much to it.
Could be new location. It could be they're going on an acquisition trail. They've just received some PE funding and they're going to go and buy 2 or 3 or more, other business or like-minded businesses in either your state or a cross-sectional state. Could be tri-state area. Could be well outside on the other side of the country. Those are all things that because if you're naturally curious about business, you find them fascinating. So, and for some other people, it's a discipline. But ultimately, it still has to happen if you want to be at the top of your game and being a great account manager / business development manager for an MSP. Those are the types of things that you need to get through, right? So the QBR for me is 25 minutes. It's 5 minutes take care of service good, bad, relationship good, any grumbles. 20 minutes talking about business.
100. That's my goal. I want to run out. I try to keep it to 55 minutes, and that includes going over some budgeting because I really want to help them understand their budget. Personally, I hate being surprised. Nothing makes me more upset than the surprise. Like, oh, by the way, that one kills you. So I try really hard for us not to surprise our customers with anything. And I'd rather have that sort of upfront conversation of like, let's say we show them some budget and they're not, for whatever reason, able to afford that. Well, let's figure out how we're going to work with that. Because we don't want, we want you to be safe and secure and successful. We want to keep your people safe and secure and successful. We want to work with that. And obviously, you're not always going to be bad. You're not always going to have 100% success. The more we can be upfront and transparent and be part of that partnership really matters. And especially so, 100. But if I could talk about but right, hit the nail on the head. 25 minutes, 30 minutes of that is business. Love that. That's my favorite conversation where it's like almost like, all right, we got to stop now because I can keep going for another 2 hours talking about this.
and then some of your skill is going to be out of those business conversations. You're gonna be able to articulate some requirements. Those are technology-based requirements where technology either supports or augments business. And then you'll take back to your team and right, we've got our 9 or 10 lines of business. How are we going to map those ones across? Do we need to come up with any new ones or bring in some third-party ones or whatever it is? And that's how you then put forward your QBR, where we're going to say, right, well, these are going to have some required costs. You're going to go back to the business. You're going to try and fit them into this quarter or next quarter or God forbid, next year if they just can't afford it. And and you get this forward set of work, don't you? Project work and service delivery work.
Very cool.
Yeah, there's George and Greg's version of QBR and how.
We should add a QBR manager to the Zen contract. That's all we had to do.
So what I was curious, so how do you, I did notice actually, if I can make comment, that because we've known each other now about 3 or 4 years, maybe longer. And there's been a noticeable visual change on your website as to how you're making yourselves attracted to the right type of customer. I thought that was very articulate, very genius. Clearly, if you could give us a few words around the way that you tried to position yourselves to those target customers.
So we sort of understood that the average MSP or standard MSP marketing visual call to action components weren't going to make us stand out in any way, shape, or form. If you did our classic blue and gray MSP website talking about how, we're a world-class service organization, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure,
yeah.
It is.
We love it, but it is, that's what it looks like.
That's what it is. So I'm a big believer that if you don't experiment and push and find sort of the edge and what's working and not working, you're gonna end up never ever getting to your potential or reaching people that may not have initially been attracted to what you're saying. our goal is to have enough interest visually and language wise so that someone who works in that space goes, "Oh, maybe these people are different, just different enough for us to talk to." And that's
Yeah.
all we're really trying to get to. Just starting the conversation and having someone feel comfortable enough to be like, "Oh, they sort of get what I want to be, and they feel my pain and my fears." Or things that would keep me up at night, or at the end of the day, they get me a little more than these folks who are your sort of standard issue MSP. And once again, it's all has to come together as like a whole, as a continuum of like website, social, video, or podcast, or video cast, whatever the different formats of that. It all has to come together into something that tells a story, which is that's how we all consume things, and also to really answer their questions so they know who they're working with before they're actually working with you. That's our real goal.
Yeah, well, this falls back nicely to the fact that you've really identified who your perfect customer is, right?
I
And then you've styled yourselves in a way which is appealing to those customers. When they
100%.
dig a little bit, they find out these guys are talking about the pain points that we have, and they're supplying solutions to the pain points that we have. I mean, it's
Right.
kind of sales 101, but to be fair, not many of us in the MSP world do it because, and I'll tell you why, because they're going after lots of different styles of customers. They're going after,
Right.
and I think that's something that you guys uniquely bring, is that you're going after the creative. So you have to come across as creative, and I think you've done
Right.
that really well.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that, and I think how I looked at it more, even just from a really practical perspective, New York's probably the largest market density-wise in the United States, but it's also the hardest market in the United States, I think, because there's so many MSPs here. There's so many really good MSPs, like top, this really top performers, and so you have to look at where you can. I think all businesses should look at where they're unique and special, and how they can outcompete or outwork, just do a better job than your competitor. If all you're doing is going after 20 to 100 per seat customers, and you know nothing specialty about their business, then you're just competing on price, I think, at that point. And competing on price is a downward spiral for everyone in the business, because we know how expensive it is to deliver great managed services. So we have to I think be more specialized. I think niching down is the only way forward for many MSPs, especially in this age of consolidation that we're sort of seeing. Not that it's a huge amount of consolidation, but it's out there. And also, I think it just serves the customer better, because we know, and that's really what our mission should be, is to serve our customers and keep them safe and function effective. So I think that it really all ties in together. The marketing, for me at least, is how it's an extension of what we actually do, as opposed to just a way to get new customers. Well, it's our outward facing messaging, so that people can understand us better.
Do you kind of use it too as a little bit of a hiring destination or an employment target too? Is this as part of our culture? We want these style of people.
I think ideally, yes. I think we want people to have consumed the content before they come on board, to see who they're going to be working with. Or, it's a really important thing. If you're someone that hates Macs, you probably shouldn't work at Valiant. If you hate working with wacky, creative type people, maybe not. It's not really. Maybe it is not the best company for you. Maybe a more traditional MSP is better. But if you have that sort of interest, and you want to learn more about and have the opportunities to maybe see customers that you didn't even know existed. That's where I found one of the most rewarding parts of my job, I feel, over the years I've been doing as a Valiant, was that I've gotten to work with customers I never, or exposed to people in places I don't think I ever would have in a million years, unless I was doing an MSP like this. So it's sort of like one of the best parts of the job. And I learned so much about this different, even niching down and within our own verticals. There's knowing so much of the nuances of each, like, hey, these folks. I said these folks that work with large financial service companies versus people who work at crypto brands. They're very different, even though
Yeah.
on the surface they do the same. It looks like they do the same thing, but they're utterly different approach, utterly different mindset, utterly different. Just every part of them is so different, and it's amazing. It's like a blessing to work with people like that. It's really cool. So I get excited. It's really excited. Nerd
So
out.
what's the makeup of the business? What's the size of your team in New York?
It's 24 in New York. We have some folks that live hybrid remote, some folks in Pennsylvania, a team member out in California, some folks in Connecticut. We centralize around New York, but we can work anywhere. In the U.S., we have folks, very lucky, we have a great partner in the UK that we work with for our creative customers out there. So we support people in the UK. Especially for teams that branch out across the way. We actually support folks in France as well now. So that's been more of a challenge. I'll say the language barrier and just.
That's right. And so the final question, because we've covered all of the other things, the topics that I wanted to get through so far, but the one I'm quite curious about is around how you manage your sales team. So out of your 24 and remotes, how many of those would be involved in sales capacity, and even obviously including yourself in a certain
So from a new business perspective, there's two of us, myself and Megan, who works with me in new business development. Then we have our CIO, Justin, who sort of runs our account management, which we take as an extension of our account management. It's farming, but it's really part of the sales. I like to bring him in, or bring other parts of our management team early into the sales process. I really want people to know who they're working with before they sign on. Client acquisition is so complicated. I think for MSP, it's probably one of the hardest parts of this job, because we have to sell a product or a service that is so removed from most people's minds that they don't really understand what they're buying or why they're buying it. So we have to give them a really good sense of trust and demonstrate the process and the outcome. So really there's three of us working a lot on both new business and day-to-day account management in terms of like owning it. And it's always top of mind. And also it's working with the right customers, people who are open to putting in place the processes and that are interested in that. There's bad customers out there. Not bad customers. There's not the right customer for you, I should say.
I just call them other people's perfect customers.
That's right, Greg. You're 100% right.
You see, you have a process or an ethos, I think, called the Valiant Way, which I've been lucky enough to see along the way. And so, is that what you're talking about? Is for them to sort of buy into that and adopt your processes and procedures around, not necessarily technical, but we meet for a QBR, we look at your strategy, we're planning forward, we're not looking backwards. Assuming all the tickets are taken care of.
Our assumption is that we're going to patch everything and we're going to secure it all. But a lot of it is the real meat and potatoes of it is having us be part of your decision making process. My ultimate goal for our customers is to put us in their mindset of trusted folks, much like their attorney or their accountant, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna make a pretty substantial decision. I should probably bring my account manager or the folks at Valiant into this decision so that we can make the best decision possible. Or if they're going to go on a big hiring binge or spree, hey, let's make sure you're ready for that. Let's put all the processes in place, make sure your onboarding is done correctly, your offboarding, if that's going to be the case for this, or whatever it is, have us be, or we're going to buy a new piece of software, or hey, I know a competitor is using this. What do you know about this? That sort of thing. So we really want them to dial in, and some of my happiest days is when someone is like, hey, I don't know anything about this. What do you know about this? And I'm like, I know enough about this at X, but I'm gonna research it and I'll come back with you and give you a bunch of answers that we can then go through together, and we can make some decisions, and I can advise you, because I think that's one of the pieces that MSPs, us included, have not done a great job over the years. We want to like slam them into the box, get them out the door, and while that is how you do a lot of parts of the job, there is a component of really understanding what's happening there to serve them the best you can.
Yeah, I still maintain it's coming back to natural curiosity and asking those business decisions, which allows the principal of your client to actually let you into their trusted circle. I think you've got to earn that a little bit, but you can certainly convey that from the relationship that you have with your existing clients for when you are articulating what is going to be an important relationship for one moving forward, as opposed to just selling them 365 and moving on.
100%. A poor relationship customer generally will not stay very long, and with the onboarding complications. And our goal is to have customers stay for as long, not as long as possible, but as long as it works for both of us. And it was because we think that because it just is such a complicated and such a deep relationship. It has to be. If you're going to do the job really well, it has to be this deep back and forth, and with the open channels of feedback, and just really understand one another and support those goals. So it sounds so corny, but it's so critical. It's elemental, but it's not.
And you strike me as, I mean, I've got to speak with Justin Penchina a couple of times, and yourself. So your company, to me, seems like you're playing the infinite long game, right? Not to quote Simon Sinek, but you're playing a long game, right? So these are long-term relationships where you're probably spending a little bit more than most if there was some comparison around the cost of customer acquisition, because you want to make sure they're the right client. You're going to be with them for a while. They're in the niche. Because you're in that niche and you want to become the default, you're even more inclined to be picky about who you choose, because you want your reputation to permeate out wider and wider in such a positive way, right? You can't just take it cheap and dirty, and then if it goes south, it might have bigger damage than you might want, because you don't want anyone speaking ill.
100%. And also, it really turns off our internal customer, our team that they work with, on sort of customers that are just not buying into the whole process, or once again, we almost never win on price. And it sounds corny saying that, but like we don't, once again, I don't think we're the most expensive. We're definitely not going to be the lowest cost option available. It has to be someone that, it has to feel right. And I'd much rather have someone have that full connection and trust with us, so that it's not that we don't want to earn it, but more that they get the full value of that. If you have that customer that never trusts you, never goes with the recommendations, always fighting you, in the end, neither one of you really benefit from that. So I don't think that's it. You hit the nail on the head. It's about the long customer. The retention is probably one of the most undervalued component in the MSP business. People are always looking for new business, but the business you have is probably way more important to your day-to-day than net new.
There's a lot of rhetorics and easy statements to say, it's 30% easier to sell to existing customers and blah, blah, blah. But for me, I'm always a huge fan of the revenue I get off a really good relationship. 10 years is way better than anything I can get short term. So you just set this business up for a long term. So how do you manage that sales relationship with the three of you that are kind of key, and they're all quite senior in the business? Are you holding sales targets? Are you looking at increasing MRR on a particular month by the new business? How do you go about that side of things?
That's a great question. So we do have targets for our MRR growth. We're looking to continuously improve the product by selling into the current customer base, particularly around certain, specifically around cybersecurity improvements. We found that that's been a really place where we got to spend a bit of more effort and time. Not that we do a poor, but more that there's a lot of room there for small but really substantial improvements. And then I think a lot of it too is us just really looking at each customer, putting together a plan of an action that actually generally improves their environment. Like a great example is we spent a lot of time in the past 18 months hardening all of our Office 365 and Google environments. We did that at no additional cost, because we saw that the customers, one thing we observed was that when we brought customer on 3 years ago, that their environment may not have been as secured to the modern standards as it had been. So we're always trying to give that extra value, but invariably that opening up that project or that work with the customer and opened up a whole every new opportunities. So, the idea that we're constantly reviewing the environment, and so our target there is a sort of order of operations is like client satisfaction and retention, then not net new, but like increased product and services to existing customers, and then finally right customer, right customer, right environment, and that heads to growth. Most MSPs don't, we don't target more than say 10-15% growth a year. And at times, sometimes we may not even hit that, because if you don't hit the right customers, then at the right time, there's a lot of reasons why. But be careful if someone has excessive growth, because there is definitely, having been through it, it's very painful.
It's like spandex; it just gets stretched out. It really tests the weave of the foundation, because you're It's very hard to
100%.
backfill. Yeah. See, I think
Yeah,
the big thing for me around, and what you said is with, I call it hurrying your patch, right? Is your existing customer base is really understand what that white space analysis is. These are all my customers. These are the 9 products that we have. There might be some other optional ones, but that gives you a matrix. And green is we're currently selling it to them. Amber is we're selling it to them, but probably underpriced. And then red is we've asked them and they've told us it's a hard no, and so you don't want to keep going back. But managing that matrix, I think, is really important across each one. But you're going to get that from an account management planning side of things. Right? We have 9 product lines. They only buy 3. Let's talk about adding the other 6 if they're a good fit and they add to their world. Right? You don't want to get a reputation for trying to plug square pegs round holes or that sort of thing.
100%. And also, like some, like a good example would be like there's certain security services that just don't fit into the general day-to-day environment. Like, you wouldn't offer an IoT hardening service or solution to a company that doesn't have a physical office. Whereas if you're if you support manufacturing or companies, that might be an unbelievably important thing for them to have in place is a IoT management, or we manage a campus environment where there are multiple buildings and there's building management systems, all that sort of stuff. So that may be really critical in that case. Once again, this goes back to really knowing your customers and knowing what they need and having a real understanding where they have gaps and how you can A, fill them, and B, if they're not filling them, then mitigating that risk with them. And it's not about beating them over the head with it. That's the biggest thing. I always find it funny that every business owner I know hates being beaten over the head, yet they go after their customers to beat their customers over the head. So it's like I never understand. I never get that. Like you don't do that. You wouldn't stand for it from your partners and vendors. Why would you want to do that to your customers? So not the golden rule, but I think it's important.
Well, that's good. Look, it's 50 minutes that just flew by because like you seem passionate about talking about these type of things like I do, and thank you so much for your time and your insights, and obviously your business with Zen Contract, because Valiant does use our product, and I'm sure it's just continuing to use it, so it's adding value to your
100%.
solution.
Yeah, we're excited. We're actually using it even super in depth for everything we do as being part of our day-to-day operation. Is becoming a critical tool in our day-to-day operation, and that from both contracts to customer sign off on specific identifications, a whole bunch of places. So we're really super happy with it, and we appreciate working with you, Greg, and your team. They've been great the entire time. We've had no bad people at Zen, so it's great.
Excellent. Well, look, we love working with you too, and what you're doing and the insights that you bring. You're definitely one of the most, I wouldn't say specific, but I think the one that's carved out a great niche and have really articulated your way of helping the particular set of broad-ranging customers, but in that creative niche, and I've loved watching the journey. So thank you so much for your time, George, and lovely to talk to you, and we'll see you again soon.
Very good. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everyone. Bye now.